So glad that you guys have made it to week 3 of Then the End Will Come. It hasn't come yet, which is why you're here. So we're glad to have you tonight. Hey, I want to start tonight just by doing a bit of a recap. So we kicked this off 2 weeks ago, and so I just want to make sure that we have some context. Just remember the setting of what this conversation and where this conversation, how it all came to be. So let's do a little bit of a recap, all right? Let's remember it is Tuesday of the Passion Week. Jesus came into town riding on a donkey on Sunday, on Palm Sunday. On Tuesday, he comes back into the city of Jerusalem, goes to the Temple Mount. He teaches all day, and he ends his teaching time in the Temple Mount just giving it to the Pharisees. And we didn't talk about it much, but I want to back up and I want to share with you just a couple of things that he says because I think they're pertinent to where we're going to end up tonight. So if you have your Bible, go to Matthew 23, and I want you to see what Jesus actually says to these guys. This is Matthew 23, starting at verse 13. And he says, "Woe to you, teachers of the law and Pharisees, you hypocrites! You shut the door of the kingdom of heaven in people's faces. You yourselves do not enter, nor will you let those enter who are trying to. Woe to you, teachers of the law and Pharisees, you hypocrites." So you notice he keeps using this phrase, you hypocrites. You travel over land and sea to win a single convert, and when you have succeeded, you make them twice as much a child of hell as you are. That's not great. Hey, Nate, you want to help me on here? Did I not do the thing right? I might not have connected us here. But luckily, we have a Nate, and Nate helps us. So while he's figuring that out, let's go to another one. Look at chapter 23, verse 33. He says, "You snakes, you brood of vipers, how will you escape being condemned to hell? Therefore, I am sending you prophets and sages and teachers. Some of them you will kill and crucify. Others you will flog in your synagogues and pursue from town to town. And so upon you will come all the righteous blood that has ever been shed on earth, from the blood of the righteous Abel to the blood of Zachariah, son of Berechiah, whom you murdered between the temple and the altar. Truly I tell you, all this will come on this generation." Like, again, you just see, Jesus says, how will you escape being condemned to hell? Like, Jesus is just leveling these guys. So, there are 7 of these woes in chapter 23. These are scathing rebukes. And he says to them, like, all this stuff that I'm telling you is going to happen in this generation. And remember what we talked about. That was the end of 23. And everything he said actually came to pass during 70 AD. Like, all of them died. All of them were taken under. They really did bear the weight of all of those who had been murdered, all of the prophets, all of these righteous people. They bore the brunt of it when the temple was destroyed. So that was chapter 23. And so after this beatdown, Jesus leaves the Temple Mount and his disciples, and as they're walking away, they look and say, "Oh, look at all these amazing buildings. Aren't they awesome, Jesus? I get the corner office." Like, they think that he just smacked these guys around. We're next. We get to be in this place. And Jesus says, "Oh, you guys, not one stone will be left on another." And they just can't understand it. They head off of the Temple Mount and they cross east out of Jerusalem, down the Kidron Valley, up to the Mount of Olives. And again, this is a picture that I took standing on the Mount of Olives. All of this is the Temple Mount. And this right here would have been where the temple stood that now has the Dome of the Rock. And when Jesus sits down on the Mount of Olives, the disciples come around him and they ask the question, when will this happen? When is this temple going to be destroyed, and what will be the signs of your coming? And again, in their minds, it's one event. We know it as two events. And so Jesus begins to have this conversation. And again, as I understand it, I believe that most of chapter 4 is pointing to the destruction of the temple. By the time we get to verse 36, there's a clear shift in the text where he is clearly talking about the second coming. The text changes, and Jesus begins to focus on his return. And one of the biggest differences you'll notice between the first 35 verses and what happens with Jesus after verse 36 is in the first 35 verses, he tells them, watch out, be on the lookout. Here are the signs. When you see them, run. Like those are he says there's going to be clear, identifiable signs that you know this is coming. But by the time we get to 36, there's no more signs. He doesn't point to anything. In fact, what he says, starting in verse 36, is nobody's going to know. You're not going to see it coming. You're not going to be able to tell. That's what he says beginning in verse 36. And he begins by saying, the angels don't even know. They have access to the heavenly realm. They enter into the throne room of God, and they don't know. And Jesus, as the Son of God, he says, and I don't know. No one's going to know. If those who have access to the throne room say they don't know, how arrogant would we be to think that we are going to figure it out? So the angels don't know, Jesus doesn't know, and we're wasting our time if we think we're going to be able to figure it out ahead of time. Instead, what Jesus keeps on saying, from verse 36 on, he has one message that he just repeats over and over and over. The Lord is going to come at a day and an hour when you do not expect him. So be ready. Be ready. And then he gives us some examples. It's going to be like it was in the days of Noah. Everyone was just living their lives, and boom, the flood came and took them all away. We talked about that a little bit last week. Let me just bring one more. I had a couple of questions that came up afterwards. People are still trying to process this and think through it. I want to show you one more thing. I don't have a slide for it because I didn't put it in my notes, but I just want to show you one more thing. If you have your text open, I want you to see this. Because there are some who think, we came to believe this is a kind of a rapture picture. Like many of us, that was what we were taught. And so they're like, but Noah was the one taken away. And I just want to show you in the text one thing that I didn't point out last week that might help bring a little bit of clarity. Look at your text. That's where I got to put my glasses on, so hang on with me. All right. Look what it says. Jesus says, verse 37, as it was in the days of Noah, so it will be with the coming of the Son of Man. So again, Jesus is laying these two events parallel to one another. And he says, for in the days before the flood, what's the next word? People were eating, drinking, marrying, and giving to marriage. People in this text is plural. It is multiple people. Okay? Up until the day Noah, which is singular, enters the ark. Now, did Noah enter the ark alone? No, he had some people with us. But in this telling of the parallel story, Jesus is trying to make a point, trying to help us understand what he's saying. The people are plural. Noah is singular, okay? And he says, the people were eating, drinking, marrying, and giving into marriage up until the day Noah entered the ark. Verse 39. And they, what is they? Plural or singular? It is plural. They, meaning all of these people who are eating, drinking, and giving into marriage, they knew nothing that would happen. No one knew what was going to happen. That's why he's building the ark. They, these people, plural, knew nothing what would happen until the flood came and what? Took them all away. So even in the pronouns that are used in the text, Jesus is being very clear about who it was that was taken away and who it was that was left. Even in the pronouns, he wanted to make sure that we understood that it was they, that group of people who did not know what was coming. They were the ones who were taken away. And it was Noah who was left on the earth. So, that's what we talked about last week. And then he says, next story, as you go into verse 42, that he's coming. The Son of Man will come like a thief in the night. And again, this isn't about secret. It's all about surprise. You will not know when it's coming. Thieves don't call ahead. They don't make appointments. They don't give you signs. They don't offer signals. It will happen when you least expect it. Again, we don't have to guess. That's literally what Jesus says as a summary statement in verse 44. So you must be ready because the Son of Man will come at an hour when you don't expect him. That's the point. Then he tells another story about two servants. One of them is wise and one of them is foolish. One is called faithful. One is called wicked. The master gives instructions to his servants, and the text says the master is a long time in coming, but he will return. And he will return when you least expect it. And it would be good, he says, if the master finds you doing what he instructed you to be doing. And the question is, what happens if you don't? The master of the servant, that servant mentioned here is the one who didn't do what he was supposed to do. It says the master of that servant will come on a day when he does not expect him, and at an hour he is not aware of, and he will cut him to pieces and assign him with a place with the hypocrites, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. In other words, Jesus is sitting there on this mountain, the Mount of Olives. He's with his disciples. And in this very story, he says to his disciples, to the servant who is not ready and doing what he's supposed to be doing, they are going to receive the exact same punishment that those Pharisees are going to receive. When you were laughing and jeering and cheering, when I said that they're going to be condemned to hell because they're hypocrites, I'm telling you that's what's going to happen to the servant who isn't ready when the master returns. Now, again, it always helps me to kind of put myself in that place. And it's helpful for me to remember that Matthew, who is writing this whole sermon down for us, was seated in that circle as Jesus is sharing this message. Matthew was there. What he's sharing to us in this letter is firsthand account. Like he was there. And he's telling us what Jesus said. Let's jump into chapter 25. That's where we're going to pick up today. Jesus tells his disciples another story. And I just need you to know that the story he tells them is going to have the same point as the last three. It's almost as if Jesus only has one message and he's going to use about 5 different stories to tell it to us. And again, what are we trying to accomplish? Jesus is going to be dead in 3 days. It's Tuesday. He'll be crucified on Friday. This is his private message to his disciples. There is urgency for Jesus to tell them what is most important about his return. He wants to make sure that they understand what is most important. And there's two things that he's going to emphasize again and again. I'm coming back, maybe three things. I'm coming back. No one's going to see it coming, and you better be ready. That's his message about the end times. So let's dive in. At that time, at what time? At the time of the coming of the Son of Man. How do we know that? Because he's already told us in verse 37, verse 39, and verse 42. He's telling us, he's just given us another picture of what's going to happen upon his return. At that time, the kingdom of heaven will be like 10 virgins who took their lamps and went out to meet the bridegroom. 5 of them were foolish and 5 were wise. The foolish ones took their lamps, but did not take any oil with them. The wise ones, however, took oil in jars along with their lamps. The bridegroom was a long time in coming, and they became drowsy, and they fell asleep. So, Jesus begins another story. And he says, okay, you want to know what the coming of the Son of Man is going to be like? Here, let me give you another picture for it. It's going to be like this. It's going to be like a marriage. It's going to be like a bride and a bridegroom. And in an ancient marriage, there are these bridesmaids, essentially. We call them, in this text, they're called virgins, but this has nothing to do with sexual activity. It only has to do with an unmarried maiden. Okay, that's who these young women are. Their job is to wait for the bridegroom. Okay, that's their job. They're to wait with the bride for the bridegroom, and when they see the bridegroom coming, their job is to go out to the bridegroom, welcome him, and escort him back to his bride. That's the job of these young maidens. The bride and the bridegroom are already betrothed. They've already been selected to be married. Again, we would call it an engagement. It was bigger than that. It was more significant than that. It was Mary and Joseph. They were betrothed. The only way you get out of it is with a divorce. It's already legally binding. It's going to happen. We just haven't gone through the ceremony yet, and so there hasn't been any consummation yet. The maidens are waiting for the bridegroom to come for his bride. And when the bridegroom comes for his bride, at that time the wedding will commence. They will get married, and there will be this great party. There will be this big wedding supper that we all get to celebrate. It's going to be an amazing experience. The bride is waiting. The maidens are there outside. There's a lookout, and they're trying to see in the distance, waiting for the bridegroom to come. And they're going to go out and meet him. They're going to give him a grand reception, and they are going to finish the journey with the bridegroom as he comes for his bride. They know he's arriving soon. That's why they're out there. But again, they don't know when. And for the third time, maybe second time so far, we see this phrase, the bridegroom was a long time in coming. Again, this is distinctly different language than what we had in verse 24. In chapter 24. In chapter 24, Jesus told the disciples over and over again, you will see these signs. You will see this happen. It will happen in this generation. But once we shifted over into verse 36 and beyond, you keep seeing this theme. He was a long time in coming. We saw it in the last one. They had 2 servants, and the master was a long time in coming. Jesus is telling even his disciples on this mountain something about his second coming. There was going to be a delay between what happened in 70 AD and the coming of the Son of Man. He was a long time. In all of these stories, we'll see this again. Long time in coming, and these maidens fall asleep. these teenage girls. And they have a small lamp. Oh, I forgot to bring it. You got it. Look at here. Look.
Perfectly timed.
Thank you, Vanna. They have this lamp, okay? And I want you to see it. See this lamp? That one pictured on the left is this exact one. We took a picture of it. This is a first century lamp. You can't see it, can you? You know why you can't see it? Because it's really small, okay? It's really small. This was gifted to me by a beautiful couple in our church. This is an authentic first century Herodian lamp from Israel, okay? If you can see, there in this hole is where the oil goes. This is where the wick goes. You put maybe a thimble full of oil in this lamp with a tiny wick on it. This would have been the lamp that these young women would have been holding. And what you'll need to know about these lamps is they don't give off a whole lot of light. You know when the psalmist says, "Your word is a lamp unto my feet, a light unto my path." Because that's about all the light you get. It's enough for you to see your next step. It doesn't show you your destination. Little sidebar devotional moment. How many of us are looking for God to give us a light that reveals the next 100 steps? I want one of those 15,000 lumen spotlights. That's what I want. I want to see how this thing's going to end. I want the next 10 years of answers. That's what I want. We're not promised that. You know what you're promised? A light unto your feet. I'll show you your next step. You going to trust me enough to take that? These young maidens have a little lamp. It's enough for their next step. The text says they all have one of these, okay? The next step, the text says there were 5 who were wise. And those 5 who were wise, I'll leave this up here if you want to come see it. You may feel free to do that after we're done. It says the 5 who were wise, they brought with them a container of oil. That's what this is. And to give you the scale of it, it is about 3.5 inches tall and maybe 1.5 inches wide. Again, not very much oil that goes into this container. But it is enough to fill this thing up again. So 5 wise, 5 foolish. The text says the wise ones brought extra oil, and they all fall asleep. Let's keep going. At midnight, the cry rang out, "Here's the bridegroom, come out to meet him." Then all the virgins woke up and trimmed their lamps. The foolish ones said to the wise, "Give us some of your oil, our lamps are going out." "No," they replied. "There may not be enough oil for both us and you. Instead, go to those who sell oil and buy some for yourselves." Again, Jesus is telling us this story connected to his return. And as you would expect in this series of stories, the bridegroom comes at a time when nobody expects him. Nobody expected that he was coming at midnight. They weren't prepared for that. There's a lookout somewhere who sees the bridegroom and his procession, those who are traveling, his entourage. They're coming. We don't know how far away they are, but they're significant enough away that they're going to need more oil. Again, these maidens, their job is to go meet him. And when it says to meet him, it's not talking about meet him in the driveway. We're not meeting him at the door. We're going to travel, and we've got to travel a significant enough distance that we've got to get some more oil. Apparently, their lamps have been burning. That's the only reason you need to trim a wick, right? You are smart enough, you trim a wick because it's been burning. They get up, they wake up, and they trim their wick, and the foolish ones say, our lamps are going out. There's no more oil in our lamps. Give us some of yours. To which the wise say, we can't do that. Because we can't give you ours, because if we do that, there's not enough for us. Again, they are anticipating having to travel some distance. And again, this word meet right here is really, really important. Come out to meet him. This word is a loaded word. It's used 3 times in your New Testament. The word meet this word in the Greek was used to describe what would happen when a dignitary would come to your town. So think about a king or an emperor or a general who has just won a battle, and he is moving through your town or coming to your town. When you have a dignitary coming into your community, you do not wait for them to get to you, you go to them. That's this word. You recognize this is a person that deserves a grand entrance. And the maiden's job is recognize this bridegroom is the one. He is the one of great value in this story. Our job is to go out to him. We're going to greet him, and we're going to join the procession as he comes into our city. We're going to join in the procession and be a part of this joyful celebration as he comes to his bride. And they know it's going to take a little while to get there and to get back. So they need some oil. And so they tell the foolish, we can't give you some of our oil. And again, it may seem to us, we would look at it and say, well, how selfish of you that you're only concerned about you having, why wouldn't you? But they're not thinking about them. They're thinking about him. And the reason they're thinking about him is because if we take oil that is made for 5 lamps and we burn it with 10 wicks, then we're all going to get there and we're going to greet him with no light. You can't burn 5 lamps worth of oil with 10 wicks and think you're going to have enough. It would be dishonoring for us to show up and walk him back in the dark. It would be dishonoring to him. It's better for us, it's more honoring to have 5 lamps lit walking with him on the journey back than to have none. And so they say, no, we can't give you, because this word is a little more emphatic in the original. If you have like an ESV, English Standard Version, not the NIV makes it a little, when it says there may not be enough, that's not what it says. If you got an ESV, or you can pull it up, it'll say there is not enough. There will not be enough. It's more emphatic than what our NIV shows it as. There certainly won't be enough for all 10 of us. We didn't bring enough for 10. We brought enough for 5. So, it's important to note that Jesus in this story calls these bridesmaids, look at our text, foolish and wise. He says 5 were foolish and 5 were wise. He doesn't say 5 were faithful and 5 were unfaithful, like he did the servants in the story before. And he doesn't say 5 were wicked and 5 were righteous. It's not what he says. What he says is there were 5 that were wise and there were 5 that were foolish. These maidens weren't wicked. They were just unprepared. They're unprepared. And look at what happens. But while they were on their way, they being those unwise maidens, while they were on their way to buy oil, the bridegroom arrived. The virgins who were, what's that say? The virgins who were ready went in with him to the wedding banquet, and the door was shut. Later, we don't know how much long later. Was it 5 minutes later? Was it an hour later? Was it 10 hours later? We don't know. But later, the others, those unwise maidens, the others came also. Lord, Lord, they said, open the door for us. But he replied, truly, I tell you, I do not know you. Those who were ready were invited into the banquet. And those who were not, they were shut out. Again, this isn't just about the bridegroom being mean and not letting them in. This is a privileged occasion. And in an environment like this, the most privileged person walks in last to the glory and honor of all the people who have come to celebrate him. And to let someone arrive after him is actually to dishonor the significance of the dignitary in the room. And again, don't miss this. The virgins weren't evil. They were just unprepared. Let me say it this way. They were waiting, but they weren't ready. Don't miss that. If you would have been there that night while the 10 were sitting out there and you would have talked to them, they would have said, oh, we are so waiting for the bridegroom. We can't wait for him to get here. We can't wait for him to arrive. They were waiting for him, but they were not prepared for him. And my fear as a pastor is that we got a lot of people who are waiting, but they're not prepared. And you can ask them, and they'll tell you, I'm looking forward to it. I can't wait. He's going to come, and I can't wait. They're waiting, but they're not prepared. And Jesus makes it clear in this story that those who are ready, they'll get to come in. But just being there waiting won't get you in. And again, what's the point? What's the point of this parable? Therefore keep watch, because you do not know the day or the hour. You think that you're going to be able to figure it out and you're going to have enough time to get ready once it's clear. And what he's trying to tell us is you won't have time. There won't be time. You have to be ready before you see him, or you aren't coming in. Be ready. And be ready to wait. Persevere in your readiness, because it may be longer than you think. Jesus tells another story. Again. You know what that again means? I'm going to tell you the same thing again. Here's another story to tell you again what I've told you already. Again. Again, it, meaning his second coming, it will be like a man going on a journey who called his servants and entrusted his wealth to them. To one he gave 5 bags of gold, to another 2 bags, to another 1 bag, each according to his ability, and then he went on his journey. Again, Jesus is teaching his disciples on the Mount of Olives. They've asked the question, what is the sign of your return? And Jesus has this opportunity 3 days before he's dead to tell them what's most important. And he tells them this story to help them know what's most important. There's a rich man who has some servants. How do we know he's rich? Well, because he entrusts these servants with his wealth. So you have this rich guy, and he's rich. Your NIV says bags of gold. But if you look in your Bible, I will almost guarantee you, if you look in a footnote or a side note, it will say, the Greek says talents. So if you look in your footnote, it'll tell you that. 5 talents, 2 talents, 1 talent. Our NIV changes it to bags of gold because talent is confusing to us. Because you hear talent and you think about somebody who can sing and spin a plate on their nose or dance a jig. Look, they're so talented. That's not what it means, and that's why it's confusing. That's not a talent. A talent is a measurement. It's a weight. There are talents of gold. There are talents of silver. It's a talent. A talent of gold, if that's what he's talking about here, and most people assume it is, a talent of gold, 1 talent of gold is worth 20 years of a common day's wage. So imagine your salary, multiply it by 20, that's 1 talent. This is a large amount of money. The first guy gets 5 talents. In other words, he gets 100 years worth of the common man's daily wage. It's a lot of money. The second guy gets 2 talents, 40 years worth of the common man's daily wage. The last guy gets 1 talent, 20 years worth of the common man's daily wage. And he says, the text says, that he entrusted them with these bags of gold, each according to his ability. In other words, Jesus recognizes not everybody has the same talent. Not everybody has the same ability. Not everybody gets the same resources. Not everybody has the same acumen to make the most of the resources that have been given. So some get 5, some get 2, some get 1, and all of them, it's according to what they have been given. They won't be given less than they're able to use, and they won't be given more than they're able to use. Their ability determines what they've been entrusted with. So he tells this story about these guys. They don't get the same resources. They'll be judged on their ability. Let's keep going. The man who received 5 bags of gold went at once and put his money to work and gained 5 bags more. So also the one with 2 bags of gold gained 2 more. But the man who had received 1 bag, he went off, dug a hole in the ground, and hid his master's money. At once. This is really important. Like the first guy, he understood the assignment. He's been entrusted with this, and he knows, I better make the most of what I have been given. At once, he goes and puts the money to work. The master has given him these resources. I'm going to put these resources to work. Here's the question. Who is he putting these resources to work for? For the master. He gets it. He understands. They all understand. These resources belong to the master. I'm accountable to the master. I'm going to have to respond with what I did to the master with the things that he's entrusted to me. And he recognizes, I'm going to be expected to do something of value with what he's entrusted to me. And at once, he goes away and he puts it to work and he doubles the master's money. That's 100% ROI. How many of y'all would like to have that portfolio? The second guy does the same. The 2 bags of gold, and he gained 2 more. 100% ROI. The third, however, he doesn't go and put the money to work. Instead, he just buries it. He digs a hole in the ground and hid it. He buries it and does nothing with what he was entrusted with. After a long time, there's that phrase again. Again, it's almost as if Jesus wants to tell us something or tell his disciples something. After a long time, the master of those servants returned and settled accounts with them. The man who had received 5 bags of gold brought another 5. Master, he said, you entrusted me with 5 bags of gold. See, I have gained 5 more. His master replied, well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful with a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Come, share in your master's happiness. Jesus says the master's coming back. And he's coming back and he's going to hold his servants to account. And he says, when this servant, hey, you entrusted me with 5, I got you 5 more. And the master says, well done. Well done. Well done, good and faithful servant. And what happens? What's his reward? Come share in your master's happiness. He is invited into the kingdom. The man with 2 bags of gold also came. Master, he said, you entrusted me with 2 bags of gold. See, I've gained 2 more. His master replied, well done, good and faithful servant. You've been faithful with a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Come share in your master's happiness. Again, being faithful with what was entrusted to him got him an invite into the master's kingdom. You know, when we think about, let me save that. Let me ask this. When you have heard this text taught, likely you have heard this text taught at some point. My guess is you probably hadn't really had anybody anchor it for you in the return of Jesus. That's the context of this story. But when you've heard this text taught, what has been the application? Anybody? What's the takeaway from this story? What's the prize? Anybody? It feels like a setup. I know. I'm not being very clear. Here's the way that I have heard most people, most pastors preach and teach this text. The takeaway is, hey, if you are faithful in the small things, you will be given many things. If you're faithful with a few things, you're going to get many things. Like, that's the application. Like, whatever God's given you, if you're faithful with that, then he'll give you some more. And if you're faithful with that, he'll give you some more. If you're faithful with that, the more you're faithful in the small things, the more he trusts you with the big things. Anybody tracking with that? Okay. That's true. The question is, when is it true? Because the way that this gets preached is in a prosperity light, a prosperity gospel light. In other words, if you're faithful in the small things here, he'll give you more things here. You're faithful with those things, you get more things, and you just keep being faithful in these small things, he'll keep giving you more and more things. Is that what this is teaching? When do they get rewarded for their faithfulness in the small things? When the master returns. They don't get rewarded on this side of the return, but on the other side of the return, and the reward comes in the master's kingdom. It's eternal rewards. Do we believe in tiered rewards in heaven? Do we believe in that? Yeah, actually we do. We for sure do. Scripture makes it really clear. Not everybody's going to get honored the same in heaven. And frankly, I would be, disappointed if we were. If we got up there and Polycarp and I get the same honor on the other side of glory, I'm not going to be pleased with that. If you don't know who Polycarp is, that's a good thing for you to Google on your way home. I think of the Coptic Christians who had their heads chopped off on a beach in Libya 10 years ago, who would not deny their faith at the risk of their own life and the life of their family. And if my greatest persecution is people don't like me much because I say things that they disagree with, and somehow in heaven my reward is on the same level as theirs, Scripture makes it real clear. There are actually going to be people in heaven, 1 Corinthians says, who all of their work on earth gets burned up like straw, and they're running into the kingdom smelling like smoke because nothing they did lasted. There'll be others who will have a great reward. What we do here matters. What you do in this life actually will have an impact on your eternity. I don't think the people who are running in smelling like smoke are going to complain because they still get to dance on streets of gold. But the rewards are not the same, and rightly so. Then the man who received one bag of gold came. Master, he said, I knew you were a hard man, harvesting where you have not sown and gathering where you have not scattered seed. So I was afraid, and I went out and hid your gold in the ground. See, here's what belongs to you. If this was a scene in a movie, and you see all the people gathered around as the master comes back and these guys are presenting their accounts back to the master. When this guy comes up and says this to the master, everybody in the crowd goes, and they all take a big giant step back. Because what is he saying? What is this guy saying about his master? What he's saying is, I knew you're a thief and you're really greedy. Like you harvest plants that you don't even sow. You take crops that don't even belong to you and you just claim them as they're yours. And you, master, I knew you are a hard man. That word hard means harsh, cruel, demanding. It can even be translated as violent. I knew that that's the kind of man you are. And so I was afraid. So I buried it. Here's a question. Do you really think this guy was afraid? Is he acting as someone who is afraid? Let me try to paint a different picture for you. I want you to imagine tonight that somehow your online sports betting went sideways and you ended up in debt. You got messed around betting on the ponies, and things last Saturday at Churchill Down didn't go your way, and your bookie has sent his guy for collections. And you owe, I don't know, $10,000, or let's just call it 20 years worth of your wages. And he says, I'm going away, but I'm coming back. And I expect that you're going to be able to produce something. You're going to provide some return on my investment. What are you doing when the man with the scar on his face and the 3 teardrops under his left eye, when he leaves, what are you doing? You're going to figure out how to get the money. That's what you're going to do. You'll sell a kidney. You'll mortgage a house. You'll flip a kid. You're going to figure out. If you really know this guy is serious, he is hard, he doesn't put up with excuses, he takes things that don't even belong to him, he is a violent man, you will figure out how to get this man his investment. The fact that he walks out and buries it actually reveals he doesn't fear this guy. He ain't scared. He'll take whatever it is I give him back, and he'll be happy with it. His own actions reveal that he's lying. He's not scared. If you're afraid, you're sweating bullets to make sure that this man gets what he expects. His master replied, "You wicked and lazy servant." That's what he is. He's wicked and he's lazy. He's lazy. You remember the first guy, let's go back a couple pages. The first guy, what does it say about him? It says, he went at once and put the money, what? To work. He ain't lazy. At once. He walks out of one meeting and he goes to work. Third guy, no. He ain't afraid. He's lazy. The master gave him a task to accomplish while he's gone, but he takes the easy way out. He doesn't do what the master expected him to do. He's lazy. I think this is a good pastoral reminder for us. Lazy is a sin in the kingdom. We ain't working to earn something. Our salvation has been given. That's not the question. But there are expectations that the master has of his servants. So you knew that I harvest where I have not sown and gather where I have not scattered seed. Well, then you should have at least put my money on deposit with the bankers so that when I returned, I would have received it back with interest. You could have been lazy and still done something that provided more than what was entrusted to you. You couldn't even be bothered to do the bare minimum and put it in a bank where it will grow on its own. You don't even have to do anything. It'll grow on its own. But you couldn't even be bothered to do the very bare minimum. You did nothing. So, the master says, take the bag from him, give it to the one who has 10. For whoever has been given more, for whoever has will be given more, and they will have an abundance. Again, one more reality that the blessings of heaven are not equal. They're not the same. Whoever does not have, whoever does nothing, even what they do have, even what was entrusted to them they don't get to keep. It'll be taken from them. And throw that worthless servant outside into the darkness where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. The first two got welcomed into the kingdom. The third one got sent to hell. This is the story that Jesus teaches his disciples about his return. 3 days before his death, he wants them to understand something. When they say, tell us about your return. Don't miss this. I wish I had it on a slide. I forgot to put it on a slide. Don't miss this. They came to Jesus asking when. That's how this conversation started. When will this all happen? And what will be the signs of your return? They wanted to know the when of his second coming. But Jesus, instead of focusing 3 days before his death, instead of focusing on the when, he sets his heart on telling them the what. What should you be doing while you wait? They want to know when. He wants them to know what. What should you be doing while you're waiting? Because he may be gone a while. What should you be doing while he is waiting? While you are waiting? The master is away, but he is coming back. And you aren't going to see it coming. But you better be ready. And the way that you get ready is you do what the master expects of you while he's gone. That's what these last 3 parables have all been about. Be about the business that he's given to you while he is away. And in this story specifically, it is to invest the resources that he's entrusted to you in a way that benefits him. He says to his servants, I've entrusted you with these resources. I expect that there's going to be a return on investment that benefits me. Which leads to the question, as we think about the application for us, what are the resources that the master has entrusted to you? What are the resources that he's given to you? He's coming back for those. And you'll stand before him and answer for those. And the question is my master's portfolio, has it grown because of what he's given to me? Has my master benefited from what he has entrusted to me? It's easy for us to think about our resources and say, oh, well, I got you, Pastor. I have doubled it. I've doubled all that I've received. That's great. Who benefited from it? You may have a great return on investment from what you've been entrusted with. The question is, who's benefited from it? Has your kingdom grown, or has your master's kingdom grown? Good stewardship in the little things, meaning the things of this world, brings greater privilege and responsibility when the master returns. Poor stewardship of the resources that you've been entrusted with here. For the third servant who did nothing that benefited his master's portfolio, brought condemnation upon the master's return. And again, our tendency is to want to parse these apart and figure out why they aren't saying what it actually says. My job is just to point you to the text and say, this is what Jesus wanted his disciples to hear 3 days before he's dead, when they say, tell us about the second coming. It's weighty. And Jesus isn't focused on the when. Jesus is focused on the what. What do we do while we wait? Let me pray. Lord Jesus, I pray tonight that you would bring about clarity for us as we look at these texts, and they are heavy. These are serious consequences that are revealed to us in these texts for those who aren't doing the things that you've called them to do. And so may we be a people who are serious as we think about our lives, and we can so easily turn our focus on to trying to figure out the when and give all of our attention to that it keeps us from doing the what that you've called us to do. And so my prayer is tonight, you would bring clarity to us, that your word would provide for us enough light to show us the next step, and that we'd be courageous and faithful enough to obey. And it's in Jesus we pray. Amen. We'll see you next Wednesday. Don't forget, we'll be an extra half hour. See you then.